Marketing and brands was what I was very passionate about and what I would always talk about. But since, and what I lately do talk now is mostly about leadership. And that is because I have gone back and tried and figured out what has really helped me in my life. If I look at how I started life, I started working at J. Walter Thompson for 1,500 rupees a month. I didn't realize it. I mean, when I was recruited, ALUMNI kept on asking me, are you sure you can manage? Are you sure you can manage? And I said, yeah, no problem. I didn't realize that 1,500 rupees didn't take me too far. I started by being a Lux coordinator, that is basically to take flowers and birthday cakes for the Lux actresses at that time. That was my first job. Then I got into marketing and then moved on. And I believe I set a goal of heading a business before I'm 40, which I did when I headed the Hema's consumer business. And if I look at my growth up to that time and thereafter, and I look back and say, okay, what actually helped me grow? There were two fundamental things. The first thing is, from day one, I decided to differentiate my profession as to who I am. In the same way, I started differentiating my brands. So when I set my agenda in terms of what I want to do, I believe that as a good marketer, I need to understand my brands. I need to have a good exposure to sales. I need to understand my finance. I need to also work across categories to know that I can work across numerous categories and also across numerous geographies. So that's how I planned my career, and that's how I followed it, and it paid dividends as I went on. However, so that's basically what I believe made me succeed in a marketing perspective. But when I looked at the speed of my growth, and when I reached, for example, Hemas and at Ceylon Biscuits, and I reflected back, I realized that one of the most important things was self-reflection and knowing what you can do and what you can't do. Firstly, when I looked at what I can do, I realized that I work well with people and that I am a good leader. Whilst that is important, it's also very important to figure out what you are not. And very early in my life, I realized that I am not the smartest man in the room. I realized that quite early in my life. If I sit with you guys and do an exam, I'm not the guy who's going to get 90 marks. I might most probably get 50 plus. And I'm not shy to say that. Right? If you start discussing sciences with me, I discuss biotech. We have a biotechnology division. We have 3 expatriate scientists with us. We have some local PhDs with us, a few deans from the KDU, etc. with us. When I sit with them, I do realize that I don't understand science and biotechnology as much as they do. And that is, I think, the first acceptance, because if you start thinking that you know those things which you don't know, then basically you are not letting them do their job. But I realized that what I can do better than all of them is leadership. And that I've seen happen again and again in my life. So I would like to touch on a few elements of leadership and give some real life examples, because there's nothing in terms of a learning experience than what I call old war stories. Old war stories is basically life stories which can enrich someone with your experience. For me to start off, I think one of the first things that a lot of people forget is that when they are in leadership positions, in either heading a division, an organization or a group, is that the real power lies at the ground level. A lot of people forget that. I was told at a very young age as a brand manager that if I want my brands to succeed, the people who can really make it succeed are your sales guys. Right? In the same way as marketing people, when we look at consumers and say we want a share of their mind and a share of their time engaged with our brands, you must understand. I understood very quickly that you need the heart share, the largest heart share and the largest time mind share of the sales colleagues, and that only came by building bonds with them. And this realization happened to me when I was based in the GCC region, where we looked after the 6 Gulf Cooperative Council countries for one category. And I went on my first market visit. Before me, all brand managers are Caucasians. I was the first black brand manager to come in. And as usual, I went to a particular region, landed, arrived, went to the depot. So there was a car and a driver to take me to the market. Somehow, something told me, I'm not going to go in the car. I'm going to get on the truck and go with these guys. And therein started my bonding. We worked with a sales team comprising of 28 nationalities. So the only way, and then so the minute I started going in a truck, I really started understanding what they were doing. We lived in different compounds. We had completely different employment contracts. We were virtually of 2 different worlds. But by going and empathizing with them, I understood what they want. And with that interaction, they were behind me 100%. And so that is my first example. And again, so as a marketing person, perhaps at the lower end is the sales reps or the DSRs that we talk of. And I'm telling you this because a lot of us forget that the real power is there. You think that if you can do grand advertising, come out with the best analytics and develop the greatest strategy, your brands will succeed. But I'm telling you, your brands will succeed if you can harness the power of the people who make the sale. In the same manner, when you grow in organizations and you head organizations, a lot of people discount the power of the shop floor employees. And that is very, very sad. Tusita and I used to work in a company. When I got transferred from that company to another company, Tusita knows this very well, some of the workers came and told me, Sir Yandepa. Sir Yandepa, Sir Gyot, Otanta Gyot, Server, Nathikarala Panna. Right? Remember that. And they told that honestly, because they realized that I was going to an environment which was absolutely unionized. Right? It is an environment where they carried the chairman's coffin around the factory, right? Saying that Mehema Tamai chairman of Valalanni and Malvadang and the whole works, right? So my workers in my previous company told me, do not go. If you go, no CEO has lasted more than 3 years. No, not more than 3 months, sorry. No CEO had lasted more than 3 months in that environment. But I went in there and I did only 2 things. One is to establish my authority, and two is to establish my trust. I knew everyone was very scared as to what was going to happen because of the first time non-family member had come, and a lot of problems can occur. So I walked into the bi-monthly union meeting, and that is generally a very fiery session where the union keeps on accusing management of not giving this, not giving that, and management keeps on accusing the union of not doing this and not doing that. It's a terrible meeting. So I've seen the minutes of these things going on. Whole lot of demands from the union, whole lot of demands from management, and I knew that if I continue this, it's not going to work. So I went. The meeting was supposed to start at 2:30. I walked exactly at 2:30. I just walked in straight for the meeting, closed the door. People were just sitting down. I said, "Good afternoon." Meeting prashna. Then they said, "Sir, minutes තියනවා ගිය මාස මම කොහමද කාගවත් මිනිත් අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. අද ඉඳලා මේ කම්පැනි දුවන්නේ මම. මේ කම්පැනි දුවන්නේ මට ඕන විදියට. මාත් එක්ක වචන දෙකයි තියෙන්නේ. එක්ක මම හා කියනවා නැත්නම් මම බෑ කියනවා. හා කිව්වොත් ඒක කරනවා, බෑ කිව්වොත් දෙයියෝ කිව්වත් කරන්නේ නැහැ. That is it. Right? Then they came and told me තා ගොඩක් කතා කරන කිසිම දෙයක් නැහැ. ඔය ඉස්සර වෙච්ච ඒ වගේ මගේ වැඩක් නැහැ. අද ඉඳලා වැඩ වෙන්න බං. අපි කියන විදිහට ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් එන මාස දෙක ඊළඟ මීටිකට කලින් ප්‍රශ්න විසඳන්න ඕනේ. ඕගොල්ලෝ කතා කරලා. And I told that and walked out. Meeting was finished. Right? So I did 2 things. One is I established my authority, right? And I told them who I am. Okay. And within the next 2 months, before the next union meeting, I ensured that I walked my talk. I took that list and looked at every element. Motorbike park කරන තැනක් නැහැ, 3-wheeler දාන්න තැනක් නැහැ, toilet එකේ හුලං එන්නේ නැහැ, මේ machine එක ළඟ රස්නේ, sort it out. Right? Look at the low-lying fruits and sort it out. So by the time it came for the next union meeting, they realized that I have their concerns at heart. And I can tell you the power that gives is amazing. The power that gives you is amazing, and the real testament to its success was the FDA you know that Ceylon Biscuits is the exclusive supplier of biscuits for most American airlines. So virtually we have a 90% market share in the US airlines. So the FDA comes for a regular audit, and so when the FDA auditors were there, the audit went off exceptionally well. So after the audit, I called everyone to thank them and say thank you very much. It was a very successful audit. I really appreciate your efforts and the whole, standard stuff you say. When I finished that, these guys, union guys, got up and said, "Sir, done නැති දෙයක් තියෙනවා අපි කියන්න. ඊ අපේ casual card එක එළියට බහින්න ගියේ. ඒගොල්ලෝ බහැලා ලෑස්ති වෙවි හිටියේ වට. ඉතින් මම මොකද උනේ මම දැක්කේ නැහැ. නෑ සර් දන්නේ අපි ගිහින් ඔක්කොම වට කරා. අපි වට කළා කිව්වා අද ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇති කරොත් ගේට්ටුවෙන් ඉඩට යන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. That's it. Right? So this is the power engaged workers can give you. This is the power engaged workers can give you. Right? And so that's testament to that. And I think recognition of that is this year when at the Employees Federation Awards, Ceylon Biscuits won the gold award for best employee engagement. And I'm very proud to say that when all the other companies are represented by CEOs and HR directors wearing suits and speaking high-flown English and all the terminology, Ceylon Biscuits was represented by the president of the union and his committee. They got up and said, "Sir, අපිට ඉංග්‍රීසි බෑ, සමා වෙන්න. අපි සිංහලෙන් කතා කරන්න." Right? මෙහෙම තමයි අපේ company employee engagement වෙන්නේ. Right? So that is testament. Right? And I'm telling you because it's a story of how people who were supposed to be militant moved to be completely supportive of organization, and two fundamentals: be honest and trustful, and make sure you give your stance. But if you try to be a populist and don't show authority, also you have no success. Right? So leadership is about taking a firm stance and being strong about it. Don't worry, nothing will happen to you. Right? And you have to be willing to take that risk and go. Otherwise, you will never be able to stand up. So that's one area I would like to talk of in terms of an area I feel is generally ignored. Then when another critical element in growth, actually of your personal growth and your enterprise's personal growth, is how you facilitate the growth of people you work with. Right? Unfortunately today, because most of our companies are listed, we are there to support, most companies exist to satisfy satisfy the analyst, not the shareholders, not the consumers, not the employees. They are all about ensuring that we have the best share price of the next quarter, because CEO's job is dependent on the best share price, right? Best earnings per share ratio. So that is the only focus. So you lose sight of what is really important. The success of the enterprise, of any enterprise, is dependent on the people, and that is very important. Good leaders are not scared. I mean, Paul Berman, right, the Unilever chairman, Paul Berman, or I can't remember, he went up to the market in UK and said, "I am going to stop reporting quarterly results. Unilever is going to report only annual results," and he did that. Right? Because he's saying, "I am here to build long-term sustainable value, not to satisfy some stockbroker in the high street." Right? So one of the most important things when you're doing that is investing in people and helping them grow. Right? I will say that 80% or 95% of my success is because the people I worked with helped the organization grow. Right? People who I have worked with here know that I have never been an exceptional brain, but exceptional things have happened in the companies I worked with because I have been able to harness some exceptional brains of exceptional people. Right? So which means you have to start investing and grooming them. Start developing them to take your job. Start developing them to take their job. That is a very, very important thing. And when I work with my peers and people who work with me, and when I'm trying to develop them, take my job, and I look at them and I see that they are not developing people who take on their job, I get rid of them. There was a time in my career I didn't do that, when I took on whoever was there and tried to sort things out. That is no longer true. The person who doesn't groom somebody to take on his or her job is a person who has no confidence in his or her ability. If you have confidence in your ability, you're not threatened by the people you work for, people who work for you. So if you have confidence in your job, then you start developing them and helping them grow. And come on, I always tell them, tell everyone who works with me, 55 or 60, you guys are going to retire. I am also going to retire, right, at 55 or 60. When you walk out of that gate, the security guard will stop saluting you, the other guy will stop running and opening your door and holding the umbrella, all done, right? The day you leave the gates, nobody is going to remember you for the market share you have gained. Nobody is going to remember you for the profits you delivered. But if you have helped one human being do better in life, if you have helped one person, that person will remember you for life. And I'm telling you this, right? I have seen so many people who were so high up, the day they left the companies and all this power disappeared, they were reduced to zero. But if you have helped people, you know that they will be there. And I saw testament to this again, personal experience. My uncle is a retired DIG, I think retired almost 15, 20 years ago. And I was in hospital, he was in hospital recently. And the number of police officers who came, one after the other, coming to see them. I mean, some were DIGs now, right? One after the other. And we were stunned because he's not the man we knew. I mean, the man we knew was such a tough, scary guy. We didn't realize, we didn't think that he had any personal relationship with anyone. But then you realize that throughout his career, he has kept on helping the junior officers, not the big shots. And they remembered it for life. 20 years or 15 years after somebody retires from the police force, you don't have to come, there's nothing he can do for you, right? They came because out of real goodwill, right? So it's very, very important that you start grooming your people, invest in them. You will not see returns overnight. You will never see returns overnight. But trust me, if you start investing in people, look at training, look at exposure, look at coaching, try and understand what they need, right? And give them that. And start fighting for them. I'll give you a real, and you must stand by them and give them the opportunity. I had a colleague in Vietnam who was, I had two sales teams, one for OTC and one for consumer. This guy was the head of sales for OTC, over-the-counter medicine. He was a very good worker, but when we spoke to each other, his pronunciation was not really perfect. There was some issue. He had a slight lisp. And the reason he got a lisp was he's a Catholic. His father was a Catholic in South Vietnam. He was a colonel in the South Vietnamese army. So when they lost the war and the Americans evacuated the family, the whole family got out with the Americans, but my friend, my colleague, got left behind at something like 11 or 12 years, at a very young age. And relatives brought him up. So that fear created this speaking disability, right? So he had that issue, but he was an amazing worker. And at GSK, so we trained him, we put him through various programs, and there was something called supervisory essentials, which I had done only in UK. So we sent him to UK. And obviously he did well, I'm sure he did well, but his presentations were a mess. The Britishers did not understand what he was saying. So my boss, who was in Singapore, got a call and said, Imal is wasting company money. If this is Imal's judgment, you have to seriously think if he can handle a country, right? That was basically, and my boss was told, very serious thing, this is very bad judgment. He had spent a lot of money because he's sending somebody who we believe is the next salesman of Vietnam. This guy has no capability. And if that is Imal's judgment, you should get rid of Imal. That was the brief. So my boss, of course, knows me. He said, Imal, what the hell, man? Who did you send? And I said, this is the guy I sent. And I said, what's the issue? He said I don't think he understood what we were saying. We didn't understand what he was saying. Then I said, listen, I can tell you that he understands what you guys are saying. Maybe you can't understand what he was saying, but did you guys try to find out why? What this issue is? Nobody took the pain. Nobody had took the bother, right? But this is nothing to do with his intelligence. This is due to a childhood trauma. Then I was in consumer. I had a colleague of mine, an Australian girl who was in vaccines, who was a speech therapist. As soon as he came back, I said, okay, next 6 months, every day, we will sit with you after work. And my friend was a speech therapist. Both of us sat down, kept on speaking to him. And within 6 months, he got his pronunciation right. And today, he's migrated to the US because of special circumstances. I mean, these guys are given visas to come back, and he's a regional manager for a top 10 pharma company in the US. The same guy who they felt was not good enough to be a sales supervisor in Vietnam. Right? So I'm saying, believe in your people, give them the opportunities. If there are issues, take a stand by them. Right? That is very, very important. Now, when I'm talking of developing people, there's this whole thing of, okay, developing your next level to take on your job and other jobs. But try to also understand what they really want. Don't bring in your career aspirations and what you think should be somebody's success into their lives. I'm telling you this because I was a victim of that. I had a boss who was exceptionally fond of me, and he only wanted the best for me. Right? I was in the Middle East. I wanted to come back to Sri Lanka. They said, you can't select a country, you can select a region, so you can come back to Asia. Then I was sent to Singapore, to Vietnam and Thailand, and with the belief that I will come back to Sri Lanka. But suddenly I realized there was no course for me to come back to Sri Lanka at all. When I was in Thailand, I realized my next move was in Malaysia with group category management. So I was trying to figure out what happened. I had for the last 5 to 6 years been telling everyone that I wanted to come back to Sri Lanka. Then I realized that at every performance appraisal, my boss would say, ideal candidate for category management. Category management is generally a regional function and a global function. So as far as the company was concerned, they were grooming me for that. Yes, maybe I had the capability. Yes, maybe I would do well. Definitely, I would have been making more money than I'm making right now. But is that what I wanted? I'm a simple guy. At some stage, I wanted to come back to Sri Lanka. Right? So this is something you need to understand. There is no logic in this whole decision of I wanted to come back to Sri Lanka. I mean, when you have a career path like that, why would you want to give it up? And in their mind, Sri Lanka was a small little market, which is now a territory of India. Right? There's no future for a guy in a market like that. But as far as I was concerned, I just want to come back home. So I resigned from the company and came back. Right? So that can happen. So be very careful. Your aspirations should not be your direct reports aspirations or anybody's aspirations. It must be their aspirations. And the second thing is, there is a myth that everybody must end up as a CEO. I think that is absolute crap. There's leadership functionally and leadership as a business set. And that you must understand. Right? I think this is a huge myth. Because when people are talking about building careers, everybody is trying to be a CEO. That should not be the case. There's amazing success as a functional head. You can go in the same pace. You can make more money sometimes. Right? So you must understand where your passion is. Do you want to head a business or do you want to lead a function? Right? So those are important things that you need to be cognizant of. And the other thing is, not only should you be developing your direct reports. Look at your direct reports. Who are the guys who are going to take the second level position in the next 10 to 15 years? Right? So that is about 2-3 layers down. Those are the two things that in my experience, that are most critical. The first level directors who report to you so that you can develop them, and then at the bottom level guys. Those are the guys you must groom. Those are the future of your company. In my current company, our average age is 27. Right? We are the old people. There are 5 of us who are in our 40s. We are the old people. Average age is 27. Right? And we believe that our dynamism is all because of that. of what we can do, and we let them run the company for us. Set them goals and let them run the company, because they will then determine, they see a future which we do not see. Right? For example, biotechnology, we appreciate the vision, right? But we would never have driven biotechnology to where it is if not for the young guys having that vision and driving it. Right? So that's very important. So you look at that, look at both these levels, and if you're in leadership positions, take the call. Stand by, take the call, talk to your shareholders, talk to investors, make sure you start investing in the people. If you don't invest in your people, you're going to be in trouble. I must tell you, and from a numerical perspective, I was at an investor conference in Singapore with one of my old companies. We're looking at attracting investors, and I sat down with the investor, and he asked me only two questions. He asked me, Imal, what is your investment on R&D, and what is your investment on people development? Right? So neither are those the numbers that we used to measure. Right? I know my market share by category, by region, by geography, GP, NP, ROC, anything I will answer. But R&D, I had idea, but T&D as a percentage of my revenue, not really something I was pushing. So I said, I said, why are you asking me this question? Right? I mean, he said, I look at only two things. Only two things matter in organization. If the organization has invested on R&D, that means the organization is developing a future business. Right? If the organization is investing in T&D, that means the organization is developing the future required competencies. Right? So it is not just an intuitive thing that I am saying, it is a fact. Right? That is what actually will grow organizations. So that's the second thing I want to talk about. Then of course, the next thing is peers. When you work with peers, leadership is not only providing leadership for people who work for you. A good leader is also somebody who provides leadership for people who work with you, people who don't report to you. Right? In the organization, these are not people who report to you. These are your peers, people who work alongside you, having similar responsibilities. A good leader will provide leadership to those people. Keep that in mind. Right? When you're in a peer organization, when you're with your peers, what do? Do you get together with them? I know what usually happens. Either you'll gossip about somebody, or you will go. There are three things. One is you gossip about somebody, you criticize the CEO, then you criticize the company. Right? All our companies have the worst CEO and the worst culture, right? All the other companies have better CEOs and better cultures than we have. Right? You go and discuss at the lunchroom and see what happens. Every lunchroom discussion will discuss all the problems that are in the company. Right? This is terrible, bloody, always. That's right. So the real leaders are the people who are willing to take a stance at that time and say, no, why are we talking this crap? Let's talk about something. Let's talk about what we can do for this organization and start influencing them, so that, when you start, these are the guys who are, if you see yourself doing that, your peers will start accepting you as their leader. If your peers are accepting you as their leader because you're aligning with them in criticizing the CEO and the company and the chairman and the, everyone, you're not a leader. Then you're like, you're a politician. Politicians are not needed to run businesses. Leaders are people who have the guts to take a stand and say, this is how it is done. Right? So that's very important. Also, when you're talking of leadership, you must remember that it's very important to manage the people you work for. That is very, very important. How do you manage the people you work for? Again, a real life experience. I had just been transferred to Vietnam. Vietnam was a hot market at that time. So a lot of eyes were on the country, and I come to Singapore for my first regional meeting. I put my slides up, and all I said was, Xin Chao, greetings from Vietnam. And bloody hell, regional sales director and the regional marketing director went at me. I had not even, I just put the content slide and rough. I was clobbered. I was destroyed on slide 1. And I thought, what happened? All I said was Xin Chao. Xin Chao in Vietnamese is greetings. And I was destroyed about Vietnam strategy. You guys don't know what you're doing. And I was 23, so I was 26 when I was trans. At 26, I thought, bloody hell. Middle East Africa was so nice and calm. People are so friendly. And I come to this bloody region. I don't want to work in Asia. I was thinking, shit, enough is enough. I can't work in this company. So then it came to the tea break. And this is Asia Pacific. So tea break, when I went to the tea break, there were two very elderly gentlemen. One is the guy from Sri Lanka, who was a very senior person, and the guy from Malaysia. The guy from Sri Lanka, all of you all know. So I mentioned, Dihan Seniratna, I don't know if you know him. So they called me, and I was really upset. I thought, bloody hell, I don't want to work in this environment. They called me to side and said, Imal, nothing to do with your strategies in Vietnam. They just don't like your boss. Right? So what happened? Right? My boss has very rightly told them, don't come and propose strategies for Vietnam without working in Vietnam for at least a week or 2. Very right. But he just didn't know how to say it and put it across. So what I did first and foremost was to tell them, call my boss and say, listen, I'm having issues. I'm not coming back. I want to stay 1 more week in Singapore and come because I need to clear some things with these 2 guys. I stayed for a week and aligned myself with them, understood what their requirements are. See, they're also responsible for driving regional strategy, right? Aligned with them, understood them, built a relationship with them, and after that, things worked out smoothly. So it's very important for you to understand how you also, in the same way you manage the people who work for you and with you, also important to start managing the people who you work for. And you must understand what ticks a person, what doesn't tick a person. That is the EQ in you. That EQ to me is a very important attribute you need to develop, where you know what to tell whom at what stage. One of the critical things I learned, particularly dealing with shareholders, right? Shareholders or even bosses, is they will trust a person who will tell you good news and bad news in the same breath, right? You are generally safer telling the good news, right? There's never a problem. But if you continuously stay without giving the bad news, when shit hits the fan, right? Your boss is going to be caught in surprise. And that's when your relationship, and with at some stage, this is going to happen. So one of the best ways of managing your supervisor or your managing director, your chairman, whoever, is to tell them good news and bad news. But you must know when to tell bad news and when to tell good news, right? I realized, for example, in that company I worked with, that whilst we had all these presentations and all these things in boardrooms, the real discussion happened after dinner, right? So I would go out. I am not a guy who likes to stay up late drinking, but I just go out. I don't have to drink, but hang around with them, spend time with them, and use that time to tell about these things, the issues you have, right? So it's very, very, and so in different environments, you need to figure out how to say that. In a particular place that, this is the nose, we had a very, very tough chairman, amazing visionary, amazing leader, but everybody is shitting scared of talking to him, right? Because he will beat the crap out of you. He will, because for him there's nothing called impossible. He will get it done. So there was some very, very bad news I had to give, and very, very, very bad news a lot of us had to give. And I was also quite new in the organization. Nobody was willing to give the bad news to him. I said, no, we have to say it. Then everyone is saying, no, you're new. You don't know what it is like. I said, that's okay. I will go and tell him. So the other directors also, some of the others, 2 of the others came in with me because they thought if I'm fired, at least they will stop me from getting fired and, sort it out. So they just came to support me. And as usual, I came and I sat down and I told Chairman, this issue, the thing, I've looked at this is not working. and he blasted the shit out of me, right? He screamed at me, and then the other two directors are there, and they were saying, you're trying to stop. I said, oh, and he scolded them and scolded me. Went on for about half an hour, 35 minutes. So I thought, now finished, right? I think job's done. The other two guys are worried that he's going to sack me. Then everything was finished, and he said, okay, put a board paper, sign it. Done. Right? Because, end of the day, he trusted, liked the fact that I came and told him the truth. It was really, really bad news. Really, really bad news. Right? But he trusted, and from that day I believed I built his trust. And he knew thereafter, if I will tell him whether it's good news or bad news, I will tell him as it is. And that to me is a very, very important thing. And that's where you start building trust. Right? And building trust is something that's common at any level in organization. Building trust does not come artificially. You can't create it. It must happen because that's a natural you. And that is my closing example I will talk of. When I was based in Thailand, I've just been transferred to Thailand for the fundamental reason that there was a huge issue between expat management and the local staff. And the Thai business was not going anywhere because of this conflict. So because I had great relationships in Vietnam, they felt that I might be able to help out, sort it out in Thailand. But I went, and my God, I never felt so isolated. Nobody, people were there, they were talking to me because I was their boss, but I could sense that there was no relationship, no real connect. And, I was trying to figure out, my God, what do I do here? Then two things happened the next weekend, which I didn't actually plan to do as a strategy. First is, on Friday, I walked up to, there's a group of girls, and I knew that some of them were going for meditation. So I went and said, and I had nothing to do. I've been in Thailand, my wife had come to Colombo. So Thailand, living in an apartment, you're like stuck. What do you do? So bored out of my day, I said, maybe I'll try some meditation. So I went to these girls and said, do you guys go for meditation? Can you take me? And they said, you're Buddhist. I said, yes, I'm Buddhist. Okay. And they said, okay, this weekend you come, we'll take you for meditation. So then I went on Saturday for meditation with them. And, didn't understand half the things, but I just went for meditation. Then I found out there was another girl who had met with motorcycle accident. So next day I came, I told my driver I want to go and see this girl. Went to her house and saw the girl and came. When I came back on Monday, the whole office has changed. This whole thing about expats and local staff, because it was always very European expats who, because felt the Thais don't always speak great English, the Thais are not intelligent. And the Thais thought these guys are idiots because Thais had never been colonized. Unlike us, they were never a colony, they were always independent. So they think they don't like the white arrogance too much, right? Though they're saying very docile, they're not really like that. So that's the conflict. The minute they saw me and realized, my God, I'm like them because perhaps I'm a Buddhist. And the fact that I went and saw a young girl who was just a very junior person in the staff, who was an expert, made with accident. Immediately they realized that I actually cared for them. That I was very different to all the white expats that were there. And so my point is that none of these are things that I planned. I never planned it. It happened naturally, right? So if you're a good human being, and if you consciously try to do things that are good for you and good for people around you, I'm telling you, you will win your trust. And that works at every level in the organization. So thank you very much for the time and the patience here. It's a tough day, so it's a pleasure to be with you guys.
Any question? Any